Hi, welcome to your pre-assessment guide for your FMO forwarder assessment. Today we're going to cover the articulated forwarder, and this is also relevant if you're using a tractor and trailer forwarder. I'm joined today by Michael Crutchley.
Hello.
He's a registered MPTC assessor and Lantra trainer, plus has 20 years forestry experience as a contractor. My name's Sarah, I'm from MJ Woodland Services, and this is a guide to help you prepare for your FMO forwarder assessment. We would like to thank Forestry Focused Future, an innovative funding scheme, for supporting these videos today, and to Callum Campbell of Forestry Services Limited for the use of his machine and site. This is one of 5 videos covering the knowledge and skill you need to prepare for your FMO forwarder assessment. It needs to be watched, these videos need to be watched in conjunction with our base machine videos. In the base machine videos, we cover your PPE, your health and safety legislation, record keeping, waste disposal, hydraulic hoses. So it's important that you watch these forwarder videos in conjunction with base machine. This is not a training video on how to drive a forwarder. We already assume you have a good level of skill. So we always recommend that you seek formal training and read your qualification guidance before undertaking your assessment. This is video 2 in the forwarder series, and we'll be covering safe driving techniques and common driving faults, as you need to discuss these as part of your assessment. Okay, so as with all driving, we pick up faults along the way, and especially with FMO, as there is no formal training for FMO. So what are the common faults that you wouldn't want to see?
Principally, what we don't want to see is when they're using the grapple is not the grapple fully enclosing the load, the gap in the bottom, so stuff can fall out. We don't want to see that. Overloading the bunk, it should only go to the top of the pins and the top of the headboard, not above. I know we all want to put massive loads on to impress the assessor, but no, he doesn't want to be impressed. And the other one is make sure the loader is parked before you drive off, so the grapple down on the load or the crane stretched out somewhere so that it can't flop around as you're driving along. And also make sure when you do go to load or unload, the machine is stopped. I know it looks impressive if you keep moving, but no, make sure the machine is stopped.
Right, so we're all ready to go. We've done our pre-start checks, so we've got to consider how we're going to get in and out of the forestry, our route, which is quite important. Obviously, Google Maps isn't going to be helping us much with how we're going to get in and out of the site. So, what have we got to consider when planning our route into the woodland and back?
Yeah, you've got to consider the time of year. So, in summer and winter, there's massive differences. In the winter, you're going to be wetter ground, snow. You could have ice, but then it could also be frozen ground, makes it a bit easier. Summer, obviously a lot easier because the ground's harder, give you more grip. The terrain you're going to go over, how steep it is, side slopes, whether it's really wet and boggy. If it's wet and boggy, the availability of brash, different species will give you different amounts of brash. You know, the gold standard is the old Sitka spruce, plenty of brash on that, lasts well. Larch, disaster, drop it on the floor, disappears. And then looking for the standing trees to make sure a route takes you through away from the standing trees. You don't start marking them, especially in thinnings, because the whole point of thinnings is to improve the crop, not get you going and smash the bottom out of every tree. And then think about, if there is wet spots, planning your load, or if there's a bit of a side slope to come over, you want to start a load at the back, perhaps half load it, come past the obstruction, and then finish topping the load up before you come out of the woods. So
when using the loader, what are the best practice techniques that we need to think about?
Principally then, when you're using the grapple, it's, the grapple's got to fully encircle the load. You don't want gaps in the bottom so things can drop out. Think about how far you are reaching away from the vehicle. Further you are, the more likely you are to topple it over. So at that point, you want to have the loader as low as you can, draw the load into you, and then lift it up onto the bunk at the last possible moment, so as to not upset the load. If you've got a trailer crane, you put the legs down to give it a bit of stability. The big machine behind us, we'll use the oscillation lock or frame lock. Again, that'll lock the trailer to the cab, again to reduce chances of it tipping over. You can put a bit more weight into the bottom of the machine, such as here where we put the band tracks on. You could consider water ballasting the tyres. And then when you actually are driving around, make sure that you want the crane as low as you can on the load, because to reduce the centre of gravity. If you drive around with a knuckle up in the air, not only do you put a hazard to any power line that's in the area, but also you put weight high up in the air, make the trailer a bit more unstable.
Okay, so when working on a slope and using the loader, what have we got to consider with that? I know there's a FISA Guide 705, which is worth a read, but what would your tips be on that?
Well, you've got several things to think about. If you're working across the slope, reaching onto the downhill side is obviously a bit more problematical because you've more risk of tipping the machine. So, you've got to be very careful what you're doing that way. If you're working up and down slope, just be aware you're now going to be using the slew rams basically as a lift ram, because as it's trying to lift slew, as it's trying to pull the crane round, it's actually now lifting, so you're going to have a lot less power, and in extreme circumstances you can be careful that the loader doesn't spin round and take the load towards the cab.
How would you park up then when using the loader?
You want to park as close to what you want to pick up as you can. You want to have the king post in line, 90 degrees to what you want to pick up. And with the trailer, especially on this purpose-built machine, you ideally want the trailer to be straight, or at least pivoted away from what you want to do, because if you pivot towards it, there's a more chance of tipping the whole thing over as you swing the crane round.
So as part of the assessment, we've got to explain the controls of the loader, which you should all know if you've got a level of skill, but also discuss the capabilities and limitations of the loader. So how are we going to assess the limitations of the loader? How's best to do that?
Okay, well, we've got the manufacturer's guidance to help us with that, and on the king post, as we've already spoken about, we've got the span diagram telling you what you'll lift at different lengths out from the machine. Which of course is very useful, but unfortunately I've yet to see a log with its weight written on it. So that's a case of experience, as knowing what different logs are going to weigh different amounts. And again, also that span diagram is just what the crane will lift. Obviously, straight up and down the bed, we would be much more happier. We're not going to tip it over than we are full reach out to the side at full lift. So again, things to think about. So again, you would want to use make sure the oscillation or frame lock is implied, or you've got your legs down on the trailer crane, or perhaps any other ballasted tyres to reduce the chances of the thing tipping over to the side.
Well, obviously we've got to pick up all this timber off the floor, but it's not all the same size. So how are we going to grade the timber? Because that will affect what we're going to load and how we're going to stack it.
Okay, it's very important that we separate the products out. They've all got different uses and the specifications, and the sawmill aren't going to be very happy if you send them the chip and they wanted saw logs. So yeah, you've got some idea of what the lengths of different things are, different products, so you can grade them out. And then when you come to the roadside, you want to stack them separate piles, so the logs in one, the chip in another, the bars in another. So as you're picking up, you want one load at a time of one specification in the bunk. You don't want to mix it all up, as you'd be going backwards and forwards, trying to separate it all out at the roadside. Also, think about if you are going to, say, put two products on, perhaps you could put chip on the front and some stakes on the back. Think about how you're going to unload it, which stack you're going to come to first, because you don't want to reverse at any point loaded. So you've got to think which one you're going to take off first. That's got to be the first stack. So leave the second stack on, second bunkful to go on the second stack.
Now Mike's going to talk us through the different products.
This is a stack of 2.8 metre chip. This is the lowest grade. This is just going to go for chipping, either for to make chipboard or for biomass. These are 3.7 metre bars, so 3.7 metres long, fairly straight, but they're a bit smaller than saw logs. So yeah, these are bars. Here we've got every four-wheeler driver's favourite, the 1.7 metre long fencing stake. These are 4.9 metre saw logs, nice and big and easy to move around.
Okay, so we've looked at the 3 or 4 different types of products available, but we don't always have to pull out standard lengths. Sometimes we have to pull out long logs or tree length timber, which might have other implications. So what might those implications be that we've got to think about?
You got to think about the capacity of the machine, whether the loader can actually pick it up, whether there's room to fit it in the bunk. It's really long, the weight transfer, so the weight will now be on the back of the trailer, so it will be lifting up the centre joint, which could damage the centre joint because they are designed for a downward thrust. And then you also, if it was on a tractor or even on the purpose-built, it's taking the weight off the back wheels of the drive unit. So again, it's going to affect your manoeuvrability, and, the way it steers. And also, if it's the load sticking out the back a long way, as you turn tight corners, you're going to sideswipe whatever's on the outside of the corner.
We've discussed driving techniques in relation to the forwarder, but for your assessment, you'll need to also look at the base machine videos for starting and driving the machine, working on a slope and the ground conditions. And it's worth reading the FISA safety guides. So these are the 503 for the forwarder, number 705 for steep slope working, 703 on debogging might be worth a read as well. And if you're using a tractor and trailer, then the 501 FISA safety guide would be worth a read. So these are a good guide to what you need to know and the standard you need to be at. And it's relevant to whether you're doing an articulated base or a tractor and forwarder trailer. The whole principles are the same. It's not about the speed, it's about proving that you're a careful, considerate and safe operator and know the risks and hazards and are able to operate safely in your environment. Wouldn't you agree, Mike?
Certainly would.
So thank you, Mike, for your time.
No problem.
And we wish you the best of luck.